really amazing campaign that we've had throughout the of 2025 here at the SABC, where we're focusing on something that is extremely important. I'm actually looking at my script right now as I'm speaking about this gender-based violence focus, and I see so many purple profile pictures. I know we had that conversation last week with Women for Change, speaking about a campaign that's been happening in South Africa where everyone is changing their profiles purple, and everyone is standing against gender-based violence. At least that's what's happening on my profiles. But we're looking at a different level. How exactly do we protect those at risk when the systems meant to help us so often fall short? And that's the question that Leonora Tima asked herself after losing a loved one to gender-based violence. She created an app that is more like an AI aunt that's designed to support survivors of abuse. It's more than a chatbot. Zuzi listens without judgment. It guides users through legal and emotional steps after gender-based violence and also helps them store evidence securely. We're speaking about this particular app, exploring how innovation meets trauma and what it really means to create safety in the digital age. Leonora, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, sometimes we focus so much on the pain that we feel after something so tragic happened. Losing a loved one to violence is not an easy thing. And we speak a lot about these conversations here to chat about, the survivors or those who are left behind after losing a loved one or after you are close to a victim of gender-based violence. Isn't something that's easy at all to do. In fact, the trauma trickles down even to the lowest people or those who are connected to victims of abuse. I don't know how open you are to speak a little bit about the story, but more so the feelings that you felt that led you to creating this particular app.
Sure, 100%. So in December of 2020, the father of my children, their family lost a 19-year-old to gender-based violence, and she was 9 months pregnant at the time when she passed. And I think what stood out for me in the days and weeks afterwards was how inaccessible our systems are often when, especially, you're dealing with trauma and all of those kind of things, but also how normalized this is within the country we live in. Like, her story was never told, it wasn't newsworthy, because it is so commonplace that these stories happen in our society. But then also afterwards, the DNA backlog at the time was so bad. So for the family, like trying to bury their child and all of those kind of things were very complicated. So I really wanted to look and see how tech could be used to provide a safe space for people looking to access help, justice, services after a situation of gender-based violence.
Your story is one that's very common in the context of South Africa and, of course, all across the world. In fact, this weekend I was on my social media and I heard a story that's very, very similar to yours. A young woman who lost her sister to gender-based violence as well. And she went to the place where the body of her sister was dumped to go pick up the rubbish. So sort of a ritual that she does every year. And like you said, not every story is newsworthy. Some are underreported. And many victims of gender-based violence don't actually get the justice that they seek. So when you put that, I don't know if you are in any way working or you work within the AI sector, or you work within the technology sector, and how you came up with the fact that, okay, how do I put this in a digital form, and what is it that's actually needed? Because the police stations are there, sometimes social workers are there, but the accessibility is a little bit of a problem.
Sure. So what we did was, first of all, I went into communities all around Cape Town and spoke with over 800 survivors of gender-based violence and asked them, had they reported? If not, why not? What were the issues they were facing when they were trying to report? If they could report on their phone, what would this look like? Who would respond to it? What would they like to come from it? And from that, we built out our GRIT app, which is an emergency app. It is linked, it's a free app, it's data free. It's linked with armed response. It has a panic button. You can store evidence on it. We're actually going to redeploy it now for 16 days with new functionalities within it. But then even with that running, and we respond to over 2,000 active panic situations a month. We have over 15,000 users on that app. what we still saw is that young people were still frustrated within the criminal justice system. Maybe someone was released on bail, or they just felt like their case wasn't taken seriously. It hadn't gone to court, whatever it was. So we went back to the same communities that we built this original app with and said, what's missing? What are we not seeing here? What services could we provide that would be helpful in this kind of space? Because what we saw was people were getting served with counter orders because they were posting on Facebook, and now we're accused of defamation. So then people told us, it'd be really helpful if we could have somewhere where we could go on technology that we already used that could guide us through the processes, that could tell us what was happening, that we could talk to without facing stigma and judgment. And that's where the idea of Zuzi came from. An generative AI chatbot. The persona that people wanted was this kind of ardent person. They didn't want a lawyer. They really didn't want a social worker, but they wanted more of this like late 20s, early 30s, kind of cool aunt that was a safe space to discuss these kind of issues. And to be deployed on platforms people already use, like WhatsApp and Facebook.
I see. Well, it sounds like there's a lot going on in this app. Apologies. Let's speak a little bit more about this community, right? When you went back to the community and they say, yeah, we are trying to fight gender-based violence, but we're not winning. And of course, these are some of the things that were able to help you, create the app. But does the community itself then use the app? Have they engaged with the app? And have you seen a difference in how they relate to these conversations?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Look, it's complicated, right? Because technology historically and currently, I think, excludes marginalized and key population groups. So when we first started doing this work, it was exceptionally abstract, but we've been very intentional with building our footprint and going back to communities, showing communities what the tech that they helped us build looks like, asking them to criticize it, all of those kind of things. So, and what we've seen is with the first technology we deployed, the app, like we have a big user base on that currently. And we also have seen that corporates have started approaching us now to also use this technology. With the chatbot Zuzi, we've been testing her now for a year. We're about to deploy her publicly for 16 days as well. We had to be quite careful though, because with AI, the potential of causing harm, and especially in communities that have been intentionally excluded from AI, is quite high. But we have people WhatsApping us every day asking, can they talk to Zuzi? They've heard about Zuzi. Where can they access Zuzi? So I do think that the signs that we're seeing is that people are actually really keen to engage with this type of tech.
All right, let's take a break, Leonora. We're going to go take a quick break and we'll come back. And I'd love to us to go through the app and how exactly it works, what's on there, what kind of services it provides, and how we interact with it. So stay with us on the lines. 20 minutes past 9 Central Africa time. We'll continue on our gender-based violence focus after this.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Deogratus Bwire, wewe kama mkurugenzi wa shirika la kutetea haki za binadamu kutoka kule Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Maandamano yameendelea kwa siku ya pili. Nini kinaendelea?
Kwanza mimi ningependa tusiliweke kama wafuasi wa upinzani. Kwa sababu kiukweli mimi nilipata kidogo kushuhudia watu waliokuwa wanapita barabarani hawakuwa kwa namna yoyote ile wamebeba bendera ya chama chochote cha upinzani.
Umezungumzia swala zima vitu ambavyo havijakaa sawa vinapaswa kurekebishwa. Vitu hivyo ni nini?
Hivyo vitu ambavyo havijakaa sawa tayari nimeshavisema huko. Najua kumekuwepo na mtiririko wa matukio mengi sana. Watu ambao wanakuwa wanapinga masuala kadha wa kadha ambayo yanaonekana kufanywa na vyombo vya dola kwenye mitandao au hata pia nje, wamekuwa wakichukuliwa hatua.
Darubini ya Afrika kila Jumatatu hadi Ijumaa kuanzia saa 11 kamili hadi saa 12 kamili jioni majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
9 to 12 midday Central African Time.
On the Move with Palesa Tau and Benjamin Mushatama.
We continue speaking to the founder and managing director of Gender Rights in Tech and the founder of an app known as Zuzi that supports the victims of gender-based violence, listens without judgment, guides through legal and emotional steps, and helps to store evidence. Leonora Tima continues this conversation with us. Leonora, let's speak about the app itself. I feel like this is is just an outline of what the app can do, but on a practical level, what does it look like and what sort of services can one access on Zuzi?
Sure. So Zuzi is actually part of a bigger app. So I'm going to talk you through the bigger app if that's okay. So the Grit app is available on the Play Store and Google Play. When you go in, you'll see a big panic button. It says help in the middle of it. If you press that, it's actually linked to a call center that is linked with armed response. So that is in cases of emergency. It's free and it's data free. And then within that, we're about to re-release, so it's coming out within the next 5 days. Zuzi is also there, so then you can press on chat with Zuzi, and then you can go in and you can talk to Zuzi about anything related to gender-based violence loosely. So she's trained to answer questions on the legal system, the criminal justice system, sexual reproductive health rights, sexual health, sex for pleasure, post-rape, but general questions related to sex. We find that teenagers often are very uncomfortable to talk about these things at home, so she's been trained quite extensively to talk about relationships. Access to abortion is something that we built in recently. And then also we're currently building out more on the sexual health aspect, especially in relationship to HIV and AIDS. And something else we're also building out at the moment is economic empowerment, because we found that a lot of people are coming in and asking questions about how they can upskill or achieve some sort of economic empowerment. And then the other thing we've trained extensively on now is tech-facilitated gender-based violence, because we find a lot of people are coming in also to ask for help with, image-based abuse and those kind of things, cyberbullying that we're seeing a growing trend of in South Africa. But then there's also a vault where you can store evidence. You can upload anything related to your case, and we store that for 10 years with the idea of, if you're in a current domestic violence situation, or maybe you're not ready to open a case yet, you can start taking your own power back and storing evidence that then you can use at a later point within the criminal justice system if you want to. Yeah, and that's essentially an overview.
You know, I'm very, very interested in the pointer of storing evidence, because especially now in the social media age, you spoke about it earlier, people go on social media and they out their perpetrators. This is the person that's abused me, this, that, and the other, and this is my story. And then the perpetrator, or the said perpetrator, the alleged perpetrator, goes to their lawyers and say, this is defamation of character, or this case usually happens even way after the actual act or event has taken place, maybe a year, 2 years, even longer. And then you hear about the court case that's happened, especially, with some prominent figures, and they say, well, the case has been thrown out because there wasn't enough evidence. The perpetrator and those in support of them celebrate and say, you see, these particular women are liars. They lie on people. Why was the case thrown out? But evidence is a huge factor. But we also might not really understand what evidence actually is. So take me through this part in particular, because I'm really interested. How does Zuzi help with the storing of evidence, and what can be considered evidence that you can store away that can help you probably someday, even if it's not immediately, in court when you do decide to take your perpetrator through the justice system?
Sure, no, 100%. So that's exactly what we were looking at, is how to increase cell phone data and the chance of prosecution. So Zuzi will talk you through exactly what kind of evidence you can be collecting, whether it's voice notes, audios, narratives, all of those kind of things. And then she'll then guide you through like how to store it on the Grit app and how we store that data, but also who has access to it and all the data privacy and security things associated with that. The other thing that we're looking at, but this is very new and we don't even know if it's possible, is this whole idea of first reporter. So in South Africa, the first person you disclose your story to is often called to court as a witness. And whether AI can actually be used, like transcripts of conversations can be used in the future to contribute to this kind of evidence. But like I said, it's very new in terms of the thoughts behind this and whether it can be used in this way. So Zuzi will talk you through very practically how to store this evidence, what it looks like, because that's exactly what we were seeing. We were seeing this trend of people that were frustrated within the criminal justice system, losing hope, posting online, and then being subpoenaed to court, which obviously you can imagine is so traumatizing.
Absolutely. Well, outside of the victims themselves, are there other people who can receive help from Zuzi? I know it's primarily for those who are victims of gender-based violence, victims of abuse, but you yourself created this as, I guess, a secondary victim after losing a loved one. Is that an opportunity open for secondary victims, those who've received secondary trauma from gender-based violence, to also participate and use this app?
Yeah, but I also think it's right kids that have questions, not ideally over 12 is what she's designed for, but who have questions about healthy relationships, about sex, about all of those
Okay.
kind of things that are quite uncomfortable to talk about. So it's not only for survivors of gender-based violence, but navigating what your rights look like, navigating what our systems are like, all of those kind of things. So I don't think it is solely for survivors. I also make sure that all my children have the app on my phone so that if they need help quickly, wherever they are, they also have access to that.
That is incredible. Well, we'll have to leave it there. Before we go, let us know where we can find out more information about this app, and of course, all the other apps that you spoke about that are in connection with this, but also just, help or support that is part of these conversations around gender-based violence.
Perfect. So our website is grit/gbv.org, and then the same for our social media handles online. So it's GRIT. And then our website, you can find all the information on where to access the apps and our WhatsApp line. And like I said, it's the Grit app on Google Play and on iOS.
Thank you so much, Leonora. Before we leave, I'd like to share my condolences with you for the loss of your loved ones. I know you're not the only one. So many people are losing loved ones to gender-based violence, and 2020 is still quite fresh. So I hope that you are healing, and hopefully the work that you're doing to help others is also part of your own healing journey.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Have a great day. That's Leonora Tima, founder and managing director of Gender Rights in Tech, but also the founder of this great app called Zuzi that is in support of gender-based violence and abuse survivors, but also in support of pretty much all people who'd like to find out more about abuse and the likes. But she's also a child rights, gender equality, and anti-gender based violence activist, speaking to us about this Zuzi app.